Hey friends, it's Lauren. Thank you so much for joining me in my craft room today. I'm so grateful to have you here. It is time for a new reveal of the Spellbinders Clear Stamp of the Month. I also get the dies, and these are gifted to me as being part of the affiliate team or influencer team, I guess you could say, for Spellbinders. So I'm so excited to play around with this stamp set. I've actually had this for a couple months now, and I've been so eager to play with it and color these cute little critters, especially this whale. I found the whale to be so darn cute. So I'm going to stamp this first set of all these images in Jellyfish ink, which is kind of a really pale ink and it's alcohol marker friendly. So I'm going to attempt some no line coloring today. And then I'm also going to stamp it in some VersaFine Clair so I can do some embossing because I also really want to color with watercolor, as this is an under the sea themed stamp set. I thought watercolor on these images would just be so pretty. So I've stamped it in Twilight VersaFine Clair on some mixed media cardstock, and I'm going to use some clear embossing powder to seal in that ink, I guess you could say, and create little wells for my watercoloring. I just prefer to do this because I have a terrible time staying in the line. So embossing with clear on a VersaFine Clear ink color is like one of my go-to things to do for watercoloring. And I'm going to use my Zig Clean Color brush markers this time for watercoloring. So let me get zoomed in here, and I'm going to start with my no line coloring. So again, I stamped my images in Jellyfish ink from Lawn Fawn. It's a very pale gray color ink, and it's really great for no line coloring or watercoloring. It is an alcohol marker friendly ink and can also be used with watercolor, but I just wanted to attempt some no line coloring just for these images with my Ohuhu art markers. I use the Honolulu B markers for the most part. I do have a couple that have a chisel instead of a brush end, or I'm sorry, a nib end. But use what you have in your stock. I prefer Ohuhu markers just because they're a little bit more affordable for me right now, and I can have more colors. And I am choosing more muted colors, I guess you could say. I end up creating a very vibrant, kind of bold background for this card. So I wanted my animals to be a little bit more muted. So I went with my MGs for the whale, and it's a very kind of grayish blue color, and I think he turned out really cute. I will add a little peach cheek to him a little bit later. My crab is going to be in reds, but I'm bringing in a really pale red color to kind of tone him down. And then I'm bringing in violets, again, more muted than vibrant for my jellyfish. And I'm going to spare you from watching me color too much. I definitely have recorded, I did record all of my coloring, but in order to not make this video 2 hours long, I did edit a lot of it out. So I could release a video in the future sharing how I colored all of these images in and just letting it play so you can see if you do want to see that, just let me know in the comments. For the plant life, I'm going to try and do quite a few different colors. I try to create with either a certain color scheme, so I'm trying to do everything the same color or the same shades or the same three colors. But for this card, I knew I was going to create kind of an ocean background, so I wanted rainbow feel to my images, and I'm going to do the same thing when I watercolor. So I have my bluish gray whale, I have a purple jellyfish, and a red crab. So I'm going to use greens and yellows and oranges when it comes to my shells and my plant life. So as you can see, I have my green kelp, I have some more yellow-green plants. I colored in my shells with yellow, and I'm coming in with more orange tones for this shell. And then I will also bring in some coral, so a little bit more red orange tones for the coral images. And I will also bring in some warmer gray tones for the rock. You can always pause to see what marker colors I'm using. I didn't create a coloring guide for this. I'm kind of just picking colors as I go and color. And but if you would like to see more details, just let me know in the comments. I can definitely edit a future video. Maybe I'll just put some music to it and post it so that way you can watch the coloring and just see how I color and how I add color to my images. Especially in this way, I usually do very dark, vibrant colors, so coming in a little more muted is a little bit out of my normal coloring videos, so it might be kind of fun to share how I color. But let me know if you're just here to get the idea for the card. I totally understand. That's why I'm sharing it. But I do like to show, multiple ways you can color in these Spellbinders clear stamps, just so you have, more to use when you get your kit. So I'm all done coloring. I added some white highlights and then I'm going to set that aside and move on to coloring. So I have the 60 set of the Zig Clean Color brush markers, and I also have a blender brush, which just is pretty much water. And I'm going to do almost the same colors as I did for my other card, but this time I'm going to go a little bit more vibrant and a little more colorful. But again, I will have an ocean background, so I still am trying to bring in a rainbow of colors. So I do find it really fun to blend colors when it comes to watercoloring. So I have my jellyfish. It's going to be very colorful with pink, purple, and blue. I did my shells in orange, the larger shells. And to blend, I'm again using my blender brush from Zig Clean Color Brush Markers. It's just a clear water coming out of it. And you can see I have a microfiber cloth that's a little off camera because I wanted to zoom in so you could see my coloring a little easier. And when I am done blending a color with my blender brush, I just kind of wipe it off on my towel. It's just an easy way to make sure I'm not, here I am coloring with bright red, but if I move into green next, I don't want to have red ink on my brush. So just a little easy way to wipe off that color is just to give it a couple strokes on a towel. I'm coloring in this other shell with yellow, and I will color in another piece of coral with the same yellow colors. Now, I do know that each of these colors have a name. um, I don't usually write them down. I'm just picking colors that I feel would look nice and go well together. But if using Zig Clean Color brushes is something that you'd like to see me do in the future, let me know and I can be much more aware of what colors I'm using, and I can share them in my videos or maybe down in the description, so that way you can have that for your reference. But for now, I just mostly focus on sharing my Ohuhu art marker colors, but I could definitely do some Zig colors in the future. I'm finishing up coloring. I feel like my coloring is really long in this video, which is really unlike my normal videos. I tend to skip the coloring because I focus more on technique than I do colors or card ideas more so than coloring. But I hope that you enjoy this little peek into coloring for the Spellbinders videos. I'm almost done finishing up my plant life. I'm coloring this last little piece of coral with some pink, and that other coral to the right will be in yellow, just like I colored my shell. And then I'm going to show you how I colored my whale, which I think turns out so, so cute. It's my favorite. I mean, the jellyfish is pretty darn cute, but I went with more of a teal color this time for my whale. And I'm going to make it really subtle. Like it's just going to be heavier ink on the edges of my whale and going to be pretty light in the center of my whale. And I think it turned out so cute. So I'm applying the color around the edge, which is again why I like to emboss my images because otherwise I'd be completely out of the lines. And then I'm blending that color out into the open space of my mixed media cardstock with my blender pen. But this is a very large image and I feel like it would take forever for me to get that blend really nice with this tiny little brush pen. So I'm also going to grab a water brush. This is one of those brushes where you just put water inside of it and you can kind of squeeze it and some water will come out. And this is just going to make this a little easier because this whale is such a large image and I really want it to fade nicely towards the center of my whale. So that's why I grabbed a water brush pen. So I'm going to add a little bit more color. I want more of that teal along the top of my whale. I'm blending it out a little bit with the Real Brush blender, but I will bring back in my water brush to finish bringing that color so it fades nicely in the center. And I think it just turned out so nice and so sweet. Let me know what you think. I love kind of this white part of my whale. But of course he needs a really cute pink cheek, so I dabbed up some of the excess water so it wouldn't bleed everywhere and then added a little bit of pink to my whale. So now that all my coloring is done, I'm going to bring out the coordinating die. I love this die set this month. It has a ton of dies for most of the sentiments, which is so great. I love when sentiments have their own dies. And I'm going to use some of my Spellbinders tape to tape down my dies around each of the images. So I'm going to start with my alcohol marker colored in images just to give my watercolor ones as much time as possible to dry. I'm using my Spellbinders Black P6, which is a collab with scrapbook.com to die cut out my images. I'm trying to go slow so I don't completely shake my table and my camera. And here you'll see all of the images popped out. I think they look so cute. I love this matching die set. And like I said, a lot of the sentiments have a coordinating die, which is just super helpful. I'm also going to cut out my watercolor ones now and I will pop those out as well. And you can definitely tell there's like a vibrancy to these images that I use the watercolor, where my alcohol, because I did no line coloring and used more muted colors, they are a little bit more subtle. So now that all my coloring is done, let's work on the backgrounds. For my first background, I'm taking a piece of Alabaster cardstock from Spellbinders and I'm spraying it with some water and I'm going to put it inside of this Scallops embossing folder. I wanted to have that kind of fishtail look and I think it'd be really pretty for the ocean background that I'm going to make. So I'm centering as best I can inside of the folder and I ran it through my die cutting machine using the proper platform setup, that was the word I'm looking for, to run it through my machine. I have a piece of acetate and I'm just going to be squishing some Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink onto my glass mat. And I'm going to use my acetate sheet to kind of help pick up some of that ink and just kind of stamp it onto my background. I do this a bunch of times until I'm happy with that watercolor look. And then I'm going to go around the edges with the same Salty Ocean Distress Oxide. I smushed some Uncharted Mariner onto my mat and sprayed it with water and then splattered that onto my background and then adding a little bit of an Uncharted Mariner around the edges. I have a white ink spray, so I sprayed that just to activate some of the Distress Oxide ink and it will give it a nice kind of splattery, watery look when I'm all done. For my second background, I'm going to be using a die set from Spellbinders called the Color Block Slices. And I picked up a bunch of random pieces of cardstock from some of my Your Paper Insider kits. And I'm going to be creating kind of an ocean scene. So I'm using browns towards the bottom of my background and then blues. And then I will end with that silver and white towards the top. I'm centering my cardstock piece that will be my background onto my grid mat just to help me with placing my very first piece. I wanted it to be straight and then I'm going to use that as a guide to glue the rest of my little triangles down, just going around and placing them where the thinner part of the rectangles, or not rectangles, these are triangles. The thinner part of the triangles will be towards the left, and the thicker parts will be more towards the right. And just building a scene, covering up all that white cardstock. And then once the glue has kind of dried just a little bit at least, I'm going to take my nonstick scissors and trim off all of the excess pieces of these triangles. And I have half of it on now, but after I trim these off, I will start gluing the rest. And this time I'm just adding glue to the actual white piece of cardstock. It's a little bit easier than adding glue behind all of my triangles. So I have, like I said, brown towards the bottom to be the ocean floor, and then I have different shades of blue to be my ocean, and then I thought I would go with silver and white to kind of be the top of the ocean, like the break, or maybe even the sky, depending on how you want to look at it. Once I have all my pieces down, again, I'm going to trim off the excess and it creates such a beautiful background. I really love this. I have a lot of excess paper from my Your Paper Insider kits where I just need to kind of finish them off and put them on a card. And I think I'm just going to do a bunch of these backgrounds. I think it will look really nice. I played around with my layouts and figured out approximately where all my images were going to go and then which sentiments I wanted to use. So for my first card on the left here, I have All Cross the Ocean for you. And then the second card, I have Whale Hello There. I love a good pun. And I'm using their coordinating dies to die cut them out. I did my sentiment on the left in that same alabaster cardstock, and then my sentiment on the right is in some white cardstock that matches that last little piece in the top left-hand corner. Now, I wasn't really feeling my scalloped background. I just felt like it was missing something, and I thought part of that was it wasn't grounded. So I have this craft cardstock, and I just ripped the edge so that way it just gave it a natural edge to my ground for my image. And similar to how I did my triangles, I just glued it down and I'm trimming off the excess so it matches the size of my card. Both of my backgrounds are 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to glue them to A2 card bases, so this just gives it a little bit of a white border once I glue them down. I'm grabbing some vintage walnut stain, walnut stain distress ink, and used a little blender brush to add some, color to the edges of my brown paper bag cardstock that I have there. And I needed to fill up the rest of the ocean with blue. So I just used the leftover ink on my Dome Foam blender of Salty Ocean and completely covered the card. I thought I'd like the white kind of peeking through, but I didn't like it. So adding the blue, I think, just made my water look more like water, and I think it looked really nice. So I glued down my plant life and my shells, and then I popped up my whale, my jellyfish, and my crab, and my sentiment on the left card, so my watercolor card. And then for my triangle background, I popped everything up, the sentiment and all of the images. So I had some overlapping off the edge of my plant life, so I just trimmed those down, and now I'm using some super sturdy glue to glue these backgrounds down to my A2 card bases. So here's a final look at my watercolor card and a scalloped background. I hope you enjoyed how I colored these images in, as well as my no line coloring here with alcohol inks and my triangle with a very bold, colorful, and shiny background. I really hope that you like these two different ideas and that you're excited to get your Spellbinders kit and play with it as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!